Hi guys, I'm so excited to be here, and I feel you guys need to wake up a little, so we're gonna do that just now. So the first slide that I have here is kind of a spoof on, for context, I'm not from the US, but this is something that I've noticed as a coffee consumer from Honduras, your relationship to coffee and caffeine itself. And so I wanted to kind of start off by spoofing the classic American runs on Dunkin', and just show you what Snaxshot is known for, kind of picking up on what's coming, sort of the SNAX-seer oracle, what's up and coming in food and beverage. So if you've been under the rock, or you've probably not go shopping at Whole Foods, you've probably missed out on what the beverage aisles now offer, whether it's a meditation in a can, or I like to say millennials are aging, and now we've done prebiotic sodas as a cooler way to Metamucil, but it's not really a novelty that we need fiber as we age. So so basically what we're going to be talking about, and one of the things that I love to do kind of when I'm unpacking trends or doing my own due diligence and research, is I like to kind of pull the thread on things, like where is this coming from, what is this in reaction to? And as a millennial myself, there's a lot to unpack there, being a 90s kid, growing up with a lot of, gross products that, were indoctrinated to us in between Saturday morning cartoons, whether it was Lunchables or Gushers. And so we're gonna be talking about kind of these three different generations, millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, and our relationship to food and beverage. And hopefully throw some memes in the mix. And if you have any questions, obviously we'll do the Q&A after. But so we'll start off with talking about millennials. So I'm a 90s kid. I would love to see how many of you self-identify as millennials. The geriatric millennials, please keep your hands down. The 80s kids are not in the mix. Just kidding. But would love to see how many of you self-identify as millennials in the room. Okay, cool. And then are there any Gen Z? Would you self-identify as Gen Z? Oh my God. This should give the conference, something to meditate on. But yeah, so I like to think of millennials, well, we've been dubbed the yuppies of this era. And if you think back, what yuppie culture was, thinking about the Perrier era of LaCroix actually came as a response to that sort of high-end Parisian French seltzers. And so LaCroix decided to be, we're going to be an ugly brand, and we're going to spoof the whole it's not LaCroix or however French pronounce it. We're going to call it LaCroix. And so seriously, that's literally what happened. And so thinking about okay, all of the things that happen in these cycles, right? There's this movement, and then there's the counterculture movement. So you have the yuppies, and then came the punk era of the 90s, et cetera. So you're gonna see sort of I'm trying to allude that similar things are happening, and we start off with millennials. So millennials are coming of age in the 2010s, right? What happened in the 2010s, I like to call it, the better for you chasm. And so in the 2010s, you start to see majority of millennials coming of age. We're the ones going grocery shopping, and we see grocery shopping as therapy, because literally our whole world is imploding every fucking decade. So it's cheaper than therapy. So we're seeing us really trying to undo indoctrination to, like I said, big food, or how I like to dub them, snack daddies, because they got the big pockets. But yeah, so we start to see us trying to kind of remove the indoctrination into these legacy brands, trying to do better for our bodies and for our children or whatever. So you start to see things Halo Top as a better for you ice cream, Sir Kensington's as a better for you ketchup, and then we have Magic Spoon Off Limits as a better for you cereal. This new brand Rivals is literally we're better for you combos. Not that anybody really fucking needs that, but anyways, what I'm trying to say is this decade became, and it's an interesting study case, Sir Kensington's, the whole premise was, we're just gonna use less sugar on ketchup. And it became such a, in less than a decade, it became such a popular brand, obviously because, it was really found that market fit with millennials. We were such an underserved at that moment consumer demographic, that Unilever ended up buying them because they were like, what the fuck is happening? And they was like, okay, we'll just grab this. This is clearly what they want. And so we kind of led this movement of better for you, in my opinion, kind of like really overcorrecting, like the fact that there's like, like vegetable ice cream now, this literally exists. Like, I'm pretty sure like kids are gonna grow up traumatized, with millennial parents, like let a fucking kid enjoy a snack. But yeah, so, so yeah, and so this is one of the things I wanted to bring up because it is kind of the start of, I guess like this whole chain that now as we go into 2020s and as Gen Z now becomes kind of like the top of the totem pole consumer demographic as millennials did in 2010s, we're starting to see a lot of kind of going in different directions. So I don't know how many of you guys like enjoy memes, but I love making memes. It's easy, the best way to like kind of, convey information in digestible format. So showing you kind of like what I mean when I say like trying to do better for and undo legacy. So I have Olipop. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Olipop. Has anybody ever heard of this brand before? Okay. So Olipop is, again, our response to, we're approaching middle age now, we need fiber. This is a prebiotic, soda. But they play a lot on like the nostalgia of the OG, whether it's the Coke or the Sprites, et cetera. And then, like, this meme here is just so funny because millennials really, we grew up so detached from actual like connection to food. So you'll see things like, being like repackaged in pretty packaging, pastels, it's like this $6 like ginger prebiotic soda that's like, it's good for digestion. It's like, fucking like Ayurvedic practices and Chinese medicine have been saying that for like thousands of years. But we really needed it to be like repackaged to us and sold to us at a premium to really get it, right? So this is another quality that I like to say, like snack as a signaler. So when did it become that food and beverage, like consumer packaged goods like these, become a sort of like a way to signal status? And I'll give you this example. So this is another meme I made where it's like people now like in their 30s, like we're literally going into these like super expensive grocers and we're buying $19 olive oil, $6 like flavored seltzers. And that's the thing, right? You see like a lot of people, this is a fun fact. So Pinterest back in 2021 noted that the place that was getting the makeover the most in houses was the pantries and the kitchen area. And what was it that people were doing? They were removing like the cabin, so it's like bare shelves were like trending. Why? Because we want to be able to take pictures of our fucking pantry showing off like our super expensive grocers. So I like to say, shelfies have become the new selfie. So it's something that I think it's very, very much of our generation. And so, it used to not be like our parents give a fuck, like, yeah, here's a ketchup, we use it, the utility of it, and here we are. It's like, same with foodie culture. It's like, the phone eats first, right? Like, we need to make sure, like, that we document that we have our, like, grocery hauls up on our Instagram or TikTok, et cetera. So just wanting to note that that's also something that millennials kind of, this is our legacy, millennials. You should be proud. I feel like, we were the ones who are responsible for like, normalizing getting in cars with strangers, like I feel like we've done so much. And so, another thing that millennials have been dubbed is the burnout generation. So obviously millennials are the first generation, as 90s kids where we grew up with deregulation of children's advertising. So this is the first time that it's okay for marketers to literally bombard us with advertising, and as we grow, we're also like experiencing the rise of social networks, the internet. So we're like really kind of like the novelty of this and really embracing it. And by the mid 2010s, we're experiencing severe burnout. We've experienced I don't know how many economic recessions, wars, natural disasters, et cetera. And obviously, because like the internet makes everything accessible, it's literally doom scrolling, on steroids. So this whole movement of functional unwinding that I have here is what you start to see as like, how do we take a step back from our addiction to caffeine or excess of energy drinks, et cetera. So you start to see these like new drinks promising you like, oh yeah, you can drink your coffee and like have like a whole relaxation, like Zen state as well. Like, we'll just add adaptogens to it, or we'll add cannabis to it. So you start to see like these this trend of adaptogenic everything. Like now you have like, CBD coffee, THC coffee, and like literally all these things just as a way of us wanting to still feel energized, but at the same time not have like the other side effects of it. So I coined this, I like to call it functional unwinding, and it's us wanting to like be in two states simultaneously, whereas before it was like, okay, you took Lexapro because you wanted to like, literally disassociate, or like you wanted to have like a Monster because you really needed to be like jacked up on energy. So like we're trying to sort of find a balance in between those two extremes. Another thing that we've obviously like have by force because we inherited this ruins and we've become the scapegoat of the sins of our elders. And it's not the fucking avocado toast, I promise you. So one of the things that, that we've also been exploring with is how do we build, climate catering brands, right? So like, Minus Coffee, which I think that you'll be able to sample later today. Minus Coffee is a coffee company that's, well, I'm not sure if you can call it coffee, but it's beanless coffee, right? That's being developed, and it emulates the same taste. They promise that it has the same like caffeine, energy, etc. Automo is another example of that. So we're also like trying to think of, okay, obviously there's nothing we really can do. Our world's really like burning up. So at one point, what does it look like in the future when we're not able to, really grow coffee in the way that we're doing it now? So this is another thing we've been exploring. And then of course the shroom boom. I don't know if anybody here ever had mushroom coffee? Yeah. Did you like it? I know, but it's become a thing, and like there's so many brands now that offer, like this like mushroom coffee like alternative. And again, like that whole functional unwinding state. It's like, yeah, I want to get the reishi and all these combinations. They give me energy without like the negative effects of it. So obviously, mushroom coffee has become extremely popular, and all you have to do is literally go through the aisles of Whole Foods to see these brands and emerging brands keep popping up. And then we have the evolved energy. So this is actual brands partnering with scientists to develop ingredients that, again, similar premise. I want the energy, I don't want the negative stuff that comes along with it. So this company, Update, is very new. They recently launched, and they partnered with a group of scientists to create this ingredient called paraxanthine. I don't know, has anybody heard of paraxanthine before? No? Okay, so what they did is that they isolated like the energy part of the caffeine molecule, and then they just like drew that and like removed the other ones that cause like the jitters and stuff like that. So they created this ingredient. This is the first drink to like RTD, ready to drink, to use this ingredient. And I mean, I've tried it, and the best way I can describe it, and it's not a bad thing, but like if you've ever been on Adderall, it really, another way to describe it, it's like that feeling when you just woke up. But honestly, I'll let you be the judge. You can actually go on their website, try it yourself. But these are the kinds of things that our generation kind of has been tinkering with when it comes to, what does an evolved energy drink or evolved caffeine looks like. So now we've talked about millennials, like I'm so over us, and now I'm like obsessed with, what's really coming next, which is Gen Z. So Gen Z is like, the 1996 to 2010 cohort. So the majority of them, and if you want to feel old, by 2025, the majority of them are going to be at, in their 30s, approaching their early 30s, and then this other generation that comes after, the eldest, are actually going to be 15. So we're really old. So with Gen Z, it's very interesting. That's why I brought up the yuppie versus the punk movement of the 90s. You start to see kind of this well, does really everything have to be like functional? Like, do I really have to spend $7 on this adaptogenic seltzer? It's not like I'm gonna be like tongued down by the Dalai Lama anytime soon. Like, that's not fucking happening. So like, why am I even doing this? And so when I interact with a lot of Gen Z in our community, and our audience skews very young, and my conversations with them is like they're always mocking the pristine, like very pastel, very pretty looking things that millennials kind of brought, to life in the 2010s. Sort of like a mockery of, it's like millennials are like those like ducks where it's like, you're like the feet, like they're trashing in the water, but then like up above, it's like so calm, cool, and collected. And Gen Z comes as a rejection of like, guys, the world's fucking imploding. Like, can we just be honest about that? Let's just have an honest conversation. And like, yeah, our mental health is like deteriorating. Like, they really want to be more transparent about like, the state of, mental wellness or work or, our institutions falling apart. So Gen Z really comes to kind of, in my opinion, do more of a moderate take as opposed to the overcorrection that millennials went all the way to a different extreme. So another thing that's very important to note with this generation is that their brand loyalty is literally the lowest of all generations at this moment. Like, they really don't give a fuck about your legacy brand. I know Pepsi and Coca-Cola, they're all trying to disguise and having their drinks go through these like major facelifts, and they're doing all these rebrands, and it's like nobody really cares, right? So like for them, they don't really do brand loyalty. They'll probably like buy whatever their friends are posting on TikTok, and it's really like not something that they are really invested in, like, a specific brand. I like to call it like a perpetual discovery mode is to best describe this sort of behavior. And then here's another meme, and kind of like, what does a day in the life of, a 20-year-old look like? And it's obviously, their like Blank Street coffee, their self-care with their magnesium CBD drinks, a vape, scheduled in a breakdown and 8 hours of screen time, whether it's, going through TikTok or, having to do work, et cetera. And then it's funny because we're seeing millennials started that trend of snack as a signaler, beverage, food and beverage have this like social status to it. And then you start to see the introduction of this concept called the fun beverage. So I don't know how many of you are on TikTok, but there's this like whole thing where it's like, these people, like this generation talks about like how there's always like 3 essential beverages. Like there's your water, there's like your coffee, energy, whatever, and then there's the fun beverage. The fun beverage has like absolutely no fucking purpose. It's just there to like, I guess like some sort of placebo of like, going through your workday or whatever. So the concept of the fun beverage and the fact that they're like, yeah, everybody has these like 3 specific types of beverages. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google like fun beverage. And you also have like, the beverage girlies, the goblet, like the beverage goblins. Like there's whole like different cores of like this type of fun beverage. It's really fascinating, and I'm apologizing beforehand for like the weird shit you're gonna interact with. So an example of a Gen Z-led brand is Pizzazz. So Pizzazz comes as a response of this like Gen Z generation of, they don't really fuck with 5-hour energy drink. How I came across this was very interesting because before the brand launch, I kind of got to meet and interact with the founder actually in New York. And what was fascinating, I was like, this seems like it's fucking bullshit. Like, first of all, this looks like a push pop. And then the guy was like, no, like, come with me. Like, he had already enlisted like an army of bodega owners, like all across like Manhattan. And I just went and toured all these like bodega shops with him. And I was talking to the bodega owners. I'm like, who the fuck's buying this? And they were like, no, seriously, like all the kids grab it, like it's like they want to try it and like it's fun for them, whatever. And I was like, but why not 5-hour energy? And they're like, oh no, that shit hasn't been selling. And so I looked into the data and I was like, oh shit, they've actually been having like declining sales for like 5 years straight. And so it's like, is it, something that you should be paying attention to? Like the fact that, this is a new modem of, a modus operandi of like Gen Z of this is how we love to caffeinate. We want to microdose, the microdosing of everything, right? So I wanted to kind of give you this example because it's actually led by a Gen Z founder. It obviously has a very culty, you can actually find these at Urban Outfitters now, in case you're trying to figure out where to buy these. But it's also like something that you can actually find at just your average bodega in New York, which I found fascinating. And here's like a video of like who's buying this, and so like whether it's like cooks, they have people doing sports. Like if you go on their website, they have a couple of different like use cases for it, and so like they're really trying to be the 5-hour energy of their generation. And one of the things to note too is that these people, like if you go and see their website and their branding, it's very bold, it's unapologetic, it's very punk. So just wanted to note that because it's like a really fascinating product. And then also the renaissance of yerba mate, which is very interesting because the Guayaquil people started, I think, in the early 90s. But now you're starting to see so many new yerba mate brands, like literally like with these like fun aesthetics, like, and it's in response to like this generation also kind of wanting to have cleaner energy, but they don't want the adaptogens, they don't want the overly promise of functions. Like food is inherently functional. Like millennials just like, we came up with that, I don't know why. But like literally food and beverage have always been inherently functional. They're like, I don't need this to have adaptogens. I know yerba mate is like a good way of like energizing whatever. And so like this also comes in response to this generation, kind of like saying like, okay, I don't need the nootropics and the creatine and the collagen. Like I just want like a cleaner source of energy. So another big thing that's happening is this whole CPG movement being turned into creator packaged goods. So raise your hand if you know who Emma Chamberlain is. Okay, cool, yeah. So, she's building her coffee empire. She started off by posting recipes of her like lattes and stuff on YouTube, and obviously her audience is so like large. And obviously catering to that Gen Z demographic that it's become kind of like an insane brand in the last couple of years since it launched. They're about to launch like ready to drink like lattes. And I think they really do have a potential of becoming kind of like, wow, like who is like, not to say Starbucks, but like who is like an actual brand that, again, brand loyalty is at its lowest for them. They don't really care about legacy brands as much. So like, what's the potential of a brand like Emma Chamberlain that really has a hold on this like audience and generation itself? Not a lot of people might be dismissive of them because, oh yeah, it's a YouTuber, what do they know? But these people are really being smart because the people who are actually being like, the president or the operational people are ex-Red Bull executives or ex-Starbucks people. So they're being really smart about how they're going about and building these brands that I do think have a lot more hold in these newer generations than something like a Starbucks or other examples. And then we have the final generation, which I like to dub as YouthTube. Obviously, like if you have any kids, I don't have any, but I do have nieces, and you know how much like their addiction to things like Cocomelon, and then like these like creators on YouTube that's basically like their own TV, their own version of TV. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is like, again, these kids are turning 15 in 2 years, right? And they're already at that stage where it's like, oh, I'll have like an energy drink or I'll have like some coffee. So what does their relationship with that look like? So with Gen Alpha, we're talking about a completely, a generation that grew up completely digital. They're trying to find like connections with things that are tangible and analog. And there's this thing that I coined affordable affluence, this behavior of taking something like a Prime. Do you guys know what Prime is? Prime Energy and Prime Water? Okay, so for those who don't know, it's this like insanely popular creator brand from Logan Paul. And it's literally everywhere. Schools are like having to ban it because it's become this like craze. And so it retails at Walmart for $2.50. But it's become this like, like if you're like buying, the latest Balenciaga sneakers or whatever, like it's become this like status symbol where you like have these kids taking the empty bottles of Prime, adding other drinks to it, and still using the bottle because they want to keep showing that they have Prime even though they didn't buy the new product. And then another example of this is like these like slimes. I'm pretty sure parents are like sick of these fucking like slime things. But these like literally retail for less than $20, but they're always sold out, and it's become like a status symbol for kids, et cetera. So the concept of affordable affluence is like these kids that are like so digital, for them the sense of belonging becomes kind of this new luxury. So digitally they're building like their worlds in Roblox and Minecraft, et cetera. They have like their Minecraft tribes, et cetera. So like, but digitally they're trying to find communion in you know, a drink that you could get at Walmart and any convenience store that's not really, you know, overly expensive, but I know it's definitely been a headache for parents. And you know, here we have like the example of Prime energy drink, and you know, their obsession with like this obsession has literally led like schools to ban it, and a concern too, because it's like, do you really want a 10-year-old to be drinking, you know, I don't know how many grams of caffeine it has. But the question is like, okay, like we have this like new generation that's already like up and coming. It's like, you know, getting into their late teens. In a few years they'll be in college, and then it becomes this like the end of a cycle, I think, you know, how we in 3 different generations have taken, we went from the whole extreme of the commodification of wellness to kind of the correction of Gen Z, and then it's like question mark, you know, what is Gen Alpha really gonna respond to? Are they gonna fucking hate their millennial parents that made them, you know, drink adaptogenic this and keto puffs that? Or are they gonna be more, you know, responding to the Gen Z where it's like a more moderate take, but still trying to have that? Or are they gonna completely say, fuck both of you and like give me my goldfish and my Coca-Cola, I don't give a fuck, you know? So it really is that we're like at this like point where it's like this like 3 different generations, I guess, like this convergence of what really is gonna stick and what really is gonna be something that's gonna come into this like new decade. So one fun fact, for example, Sir Kensington's, they just announced that their better for you ketchup got discontinued, right? Because Heinz was like, oh, that's what you want, we'll do the same thing. And so like, can you really compete with the snack daddies? Can this food and beverage trend, like this emerging, like the past decade has seen an influx of all these emerging brands really wanting to reshape, and you know, we literally gave snacks a redemption arc, and we're really trying to, you know, find a better path. But is it something that, you know, is gonna stick? That's the big question. But, you know, I hope this was insightful. If anything, you know, I gave you a good laugh. But yeah, I think that was it for today.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It always feels like there's sort of a flood of knowledge coming from you whenever we talk, and so I really appreciate it. As usual, we have the Q&A slide up, but we are going to sort of run a little bit over time, so we'll probably keep the Q&A a little short. I may follow up with some of those questions in email, if that's okay. We'll kind of see. But I just want to start with, I know that your work is really rooted in community. And so if we're sort of shifting, and we as millennials are sort of engaging with other millennials all the time, where should we be going if we want to start to engage with the next up and coming generations?
Yeah, like we literally have a whole like community chat, and if you go to Snaxshot.com, you can just sign up there, and definitely use this as a free resource. We have like thousands of community members from all different kinds of places and different age groups, literally outside of food and beverage too, which is great. And I think a snack is such a personal thing, but there's so much to learn, right, from how people interact with this industry from, you know, places across the world to different generations themselves.
You mentioned attributes like signaling and function, but you didn't mention flavor. Does flavor actually matter to people?
Oh, so, okay, I love talking about this because I believe taste is highly subjective. I'm actually like building this whole platform to kind of offer a better solution to like ratings and stuff in this particular industry. I think you know, food and beverage, like the snack daddies, the way that they hit every freaking profile is by inundating products with a lot of sodium and a lot of sugar. Like it's pretty much common knowledge at this point. I think that really, again, it's about the psychological like signaling of, this could be like the shittiest drink ever, but everybody's drinking it, and it becomes kind of a sort of groupthink, right?
Yeah.
So like, there's this drink that I cannot stand. I won't say the name, but it's like this whole euphorics, Bella Hadid's part of it. And like, I took a sip of it and I fucking threw it in the garbage. But then everybody is at Coachella with their like euphoric drinks, and everybody's doing it, and I'm like, oh God, like, am I the weird one here?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that, again, that's why the whole purpose of the status, like the snack as a signaler thing, for the most part, it's like, well, everybody has an Olipop at the gym. They're, you know, these are actually at like, you know, your berries and stuff, and it just becomes this kind of like, well, you know, I'm gonna try it. Maybe you don't like it, but it seems like it is kind of a very groupthink thing. Like, people tell me, I buy these beverages just so when people come over, they open my fridge and they have like a Ruby or an Olipop, et cetera. So I think taste is important, but I think also it's so subjective, and it has to do with, you know, what are expectations you have. Like, I like to say these products are kind of Trojan horsing you with aesthetics, right? And then you're like, fuck, this tastes like shit, but like, you know, it's at Whole Foods or it's at Target. And I do think it has to do a lot with like your expectations, your bias, where your palate preference comes from, whether this product is gonna hit or not. So that's.
Yeah. And how geographically specific are sort of these, your predictions around Gen Z? Is this sort of something you see globally? Is it more location specific?
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally an outsider. I don't live in this like circle jerks of hubs, sorry, but that's the best way to like put it as an example. But I feel like living outside of these bubbles where it's like the New York, the London, you know, I feel like I like to see things like less myopically. So whenever I like do these like trying to study trends, like I like to see, okay, let me see if this same thing is happening in Australia. Is it happening in Latin America? Is it happening in London? Like water kefir, for example, like it was really interesting to see the boom in the UK. And then when I was doing an event in Mexico City last year, I was like, shit, this is also like popping up in grocery stores here. And then, you know, obviously in the LA and New York, you start to see it more. So I don't know, I feel like as an outsider, I have that advantage where I'm like not sucked into like a particular bubble. And again, like I like to be like very, I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I like to say like, okay, I'm gonna go see if this hypothesis is right? So like, I don't know, I think it helps to be an outsider.
It gives you a little bit of extra perspective, right?
Yeah.
What about some of the older generations, the ones that come sort of before millennials? How does that sort of factor into the mix?
Yeah, I feel like, again, I think millennials is when we start to see this shift.
Yeah.
Like, so sorry for the Gen Z and the boomers, but you guys did not like do shit. Like, we were the ones who were like, you know what? I don't really want to have the Heinz with 40 grams of sugar or whatever. It was really like a millennial-led effort in the 2010s that you started to see this movement really like, you know, permeate. And we actually like created this like whole movement that you had the big snack daddies, the big companies saying like, fuck, we kind of like left them out. And so, okay, we're gonna cater to them. So I don't know, I think it, like for the older generations, I really do think that this was, and also thinking about like so many things that converged with like millennials like being born at that time. Again, the deregulation of children's advertising, we grew up with this. Older generations really didn't do that. We grew up with the internet. The older generations didn't do that. So I feel like there's a big difference, right? Like I feel like that's why there's such just like a pivotal thing that happened as millennials were coming of age versus like what other generations.
Yeah.
The change was more palpable.
Yes, yeah, it felt like a bigger shift.
Yeah, no hate, I'm just saying, like.
You know, this is going to be our last question, but we are coffee people, and so a big concern of ours is making sure that coffee producers, particularly smallholders, don't get left behind while all of this stuff is happening, and sort of like you said, brand loyalty is disappearing, and there's a drive for new all the time. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations as to how we might be able to facilitate that?
Yeah, I feel like, again, transparency is such a big thing for this generation, like these generations, but one thing I like to give advice to people is that you have to meet people where they are. So you can be like with your language of, yeah, we source this coffee and what. A lot of language becomes very much of like, wait, what? Like, and I've talked about this with like people who do alternatives, like milk alternatives. They're like, what are your tips to like help us like really like connect with this like community like market, whatever? And I'm like, just give it to me like simple. Like tell me exactly like what is it that you're doing, like, like just having conversations where it's like, you don't need a third party, like going directly and like, you know, asking like the community itself. That's why I've created that like whole community chat where it's like you literally can get insights for free with our community. But I feel like it's more about like really making it simple for just like your average person to understand, oh, here's what my specialty coffee is doing and here's how we are different. There's a good example in olive oil, the industry itself. There's a brand called Brightland. They sell $40 like olive oil. And when people have been like, it's so expensive, it's just a fancy olive oil, she has like all these educational like things on Instagram, on TikTok. It's like, hey guys, we literally pay like fair across the supply chain, and this is why, you know, we have this price. It's not just because we're like a trendy, pretty packaging olive oil. So I think like people are very receptive. Another thing that I've seen with emerging brands, like when they come out to market, they'll obviously be a little bit higher priced before they get, you know, more distribution, et cetera, that can help them like get the cost lower. And so there'll be people like, why would I be spending $4 on a flavored seltzer on TikTok? And like I've seen founders literally go and say like, hey guys, like I'm, you know, addressing this directly. Like the reason why we have this is because we have such mass distribution and like et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like this generation, that's the best like thing about us, is that we are very receptive when there's honesty. But when there's greenwashing and there's buzzwordy and there's like a lot of fluff and buzzwordiness and, you know, just BS, like we are very like quick to like pick it up.
Yeah.
So I would say stay away from doing that and just really be direct and honest, and that's the best like thing to do with us. I don't know.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much. It has been so wonderful to have you here. We are going to move into our sensory experiences so that we can do some things that are now tied to what you've just been talking about. So
thank you so much for having me.